Hi, so we're going to cover the next topic our um, on our course, and it is perception and consumer involvement. So, involvement should be familiar to you: high involvement, low involvement, and so on. And obviously, all of these concepts that you've covered before, we're going into a little bit more detail, putting it into context with the wider module, consumer behavior, and how these things and how our understanding of what's going on with the customer in these things will help us give them what they want. So, so for this chapter, it's chapter 2 in the book. We're going to recognize that different people can perceive the same stimulus in different ways, understand how consumers perceive a stimulus. So our ad could be a stimulus, for example, and we'll understand the terminology as well that we're going to be going through. Again, this whole module is delving into the realm of psychology, and may have overlaps with your psych module and so on. So discuss different types of consumer involvement in buying situations, describe buyer decision process. Again, that should be familiar, but again, we're looking at it in this context, and explain why companies differentiate their products or services. And finally, recognize the importance of branding. So again, we're reinforcing what you've done before in some of these under some of these headings. So to get on the same page with definitions and so on, perception is defined as the process by which an individual selects, organizes, and interprets stimuli to a meaningful and coherent picture of the world. So it's an individual basis, how they interact with the world. It can be described as how we see the world around us. A stimulus is any unit of input to any of the senses, so products, packages, brand names, advertisements, commercials. Exposure reflects the process by which the consumer comes into physical contact with the stimulus. Marketing stimuli are messages and information about the products or brands communicated by either the marketer, so via our marcoms, or by non-marketing sources, so word of mouth, for example. And so consumers' selection of stimuli from the environment. So remember, our consumers are being bombarded with messages on a constant basis all the time and ignoring the vast majority of them. And so to some degree, they are selecting the ones that they will respond to. And that's what we mean here. So consumers' selection of stimuli from the environment is based on the interaction of expectations and motives with the stimulus itself. These factors give rise to three important concepts concerning perception: selective exposure, selective distortion, and selective retention. So as always, anytime we have a little list or definitions and so on, these things lend well to being an exam question. So it's always worth remembering and trying to fully understand them. So the first one is selective exposure. Marketers have to work especially hard to attract the consumer's attention, as we've mentioned. While marketers can work hard to influence consumers' exposure to certain products and brands, ultimately consumers will control whether successful exposure occurs or not. And consumers can actively seek certain stimuli and avoid others. For example, Readers of Hello magazine selectively expose themselves to its fashion-oriented advertisements, whereas readers of Business and Finance choose to look at different kinds of ads because usually the marketers who are advertising in those magazines are targeting their audience carefully. So next we have selective exposure. Sorry, did I roll down another one? So that was selective exposure, and next we have selective distortion. So this describes the tendency of people to adapt information to personal meanings. Excuse me. People tend to interpret, we just pop that in there, it makes it, pop that one in the heading above. So selective distortion describes the tendency of people to adapt information to personal meanings. People tend to interpret information in a way that will support what they already believe. Obviously, in a non-marketing context, people reading their horoscopes, some people place great faith in what those horoscopes have to say, and they'll bend everything to fit to make it true what that horoscope is. Very vague description usually, and they will read it and make it true. So selective distortion therefore means that marketers must try to understand the mindset of consumers and how they will affect interpretations of advertising and sales information. So, and then the final one is selective retention. So this is the tendency. So we just put that up here. The tendency of people to retain only part of the information to which they're exposed, usually information that supports their attitudes and beliefs. So following on from distortion, they're only remembering what suits them. So how a customer can perceive a stimulus. So through vision, through hearing, through taste, smell, and touch. So when a consumer perceives a stimulus, we have an absolute threshold is the minimum level of stimulus intensity needed for a stimulus to be perceived. So it has to go above that level. If you want to taste something, if you're adding sugar into coffee, a few grains, nobody's going to notice. But you start putting in a spoon of sugar, and people who like sugar will enjoy it more, and people who don't like sugar will not want to drink it. So that has crossed that threshold of perception that people know there is sugar now in the coffee. So differential threshold refers to the intensity difference needed between two stimuli before people can perceive that the stimuli are different, often called just noticeable difference. So again, if we have that 1 spoon of sugar in one coffee and we have a spoon and a half in another, will people taste that one is sweeter than the other? So what is will they notice 1 1/4 being different to 1, and so on? So what is that just noticeable difference? So yeah, Toblerone made their chocolate smaller by reducing the number of triangles per bar for each of the sizes, and they did that. The overall length remained the same in each respective size, but the spaces between the triangles was increased. And they thought this was going to be imperceptible, but people did notice. So it crossed that just noticeable difference. The customers knew they were getting less chocolate. Sometimes marketers don't want customers to notice a difference between two stimuli if they've decreased the size of the product in that case, in the Toblerone case, or increased the price. So petrol stations purposely have all really odd numbers and a decimal point in their prices of petrol and diesel, and it makes it harder for people to notice if it goes up by a few cent or if it goes down less than the overall market has gone down and so on. That constant fluctuation and the really odd numbers makes it harder for people to notice. So on the other hand, they may want consumers to notice when they improve the product if it was going the other way. Now, I seem to have lost some images here. So apologies for that. I'll just delete the slide, I guess. So they, as always, you don't need to be listening to my voice to read some of these little case studies, and they do, provide a good context sometimes, even though they are a bit older. They're from the book, which is now 15 years old, but it's the basic theory, so it's still all valid. High involvement, then we talk about consumer involvement being high or low. High consumers undertake complex buying behavior when they're highly involved in a purchase and perceive significant differences between brands, or when the product is expensive or it's risky or purchased infrequently, so they need to do research, they don't know much about it, or highly self-expressive. So if it's you want to spend a lot of money on something designer, that's a big decision. Then you put more effort in. So the involvement is to do with how involved the customer gets in the purchase. Are they thinking about it a lot? How long do they spend going through the steps in the decision-making process? So the following factors increase a consumer's level of involvement with a purchase. So we mentioned self-expressive importance. So things that help us self-identify. We see them as an extension of ourselves, perhaps. These items that we have. Hedonic importance. So we want to spend a lot of money on that holiday because all our friends are going. It's going to be, it's a holiday of a lifetime. It's important from that point of view. Practical relevance or purchase risk. Um, so all of these will determine how high or low involvement may be for each individual, and it is a very individual thing. Something that is high involvement for somebody will be low involvement for another person, or could be. So marketers with high involvement products should help consumers learn about product class attributes and their relevant importance, and about the company's brand offers on products, on the product's important attributes. So give them the information that they're looking for. So with low involvement, habitual buying behavior, so it's something we've bought before and we just buy it again. It occurs under conditions of low consumer involvement and little significant brand difference. Some products will be of relatively low importance to the customer in terms of risk or personal involvement. So fast-moving consumer goods, all the types of things you can buy in a corner shop or a supermarket, toothpaste, pasta. You're not going to spend ages researching those kinds of things. You might go into the shop, you have a scan of the shelves to see what's there and so on. You're not going around asking your friends or looking up reviews and so on. So the consumer is faced with a very wide choice and very little risk, that they'd be tempted to try different products every week. People tend to stick with the kind of favorites usually, except price sensitive people who are just looking for the best deal. Again, scanning the shelf, grab, throw it in the basket. Consumers do not search extensively for information about the brands, nor do they evaluate brand characteristics or make weighty decisions about which to buy. Instead, they passively receive information as they watch TV or read magazines. So, again, when we say watch TV, obviously, we include YouTube clips and so on. Ad repetition creates brand familiarity rather than brand conviction. So it just helps the customer feel like they know that brand. It's not doing anything to indicate to them that they really should, get out to the shop now and buy that. That's not what they're aiming for. Just that recognition and familiarity. So, continuing on low involvement, customer loyalty is an important objective for the producers of low involvement products. So again, FMCGs are always the best example. In advertising, ads should stress only a few key points. Visual symbols and imagery are important because they can be remembered easily and associated with the brand. So last year, you would have looked at using semiotics and so on in brand development, the Andrex puppy denoting softness and stuff like that. Nobody's going to pay attention to go through a list of features and so on. So it's a few quick points, and if that can be done symbolically, all the better. TV is usually more effective, so we mean video, obviously. I'll just put it in, I guess, to be more explicit. It's usually more effective than print media because it's low involvement medium suitable for passive learning. Ad planning should be based on classical conditioning theory. We'll look at what that is in a few weeks, in which buyers learn to identify a certain product by a symbol repeatedly attached to it. So again, the Andrex puppy. Brand switching often occurs for the sake of variety rather than dissatisfaction. That's saying it's. So we have a little table. Let me just go to a bigger screen because okay, so consumer decision processes for high and low purchase decisions. So we've got in the middle column, we've got low involvement purchase decisions. On the right hand side, we've high involvement purchase decisions. And then across, so this is a table. So across each row, the headings for each row are the steps in the decision-making process. So for the first step of problem recognition, for low involvement decisions, it's trivial to minor issue here, whereas problem recognition is very important and personally meaningful in high involvement purchases. Again, information search on the low involvement, it's internal to limited external. So it's about remembering what your experience was with previously when you had that brand. So internal is all about your own experience. So your memory of how you got on before, whether that was good or bad, and whether passively maybe you heard about other things. So very limited external search. Whereas in high involvement, obviously, it's extensive internal and external search. So asking people, actively looking up reviews, actively looking up information. And then that follows then with how do we evaluate that information? So alternative evaluation and selection. So few alternatives are evaluated. So there's not much of a weighing up on pros and cons and so on. And very few performance criteria. So we're not really looking at much when we're weighing up, will we buy that one or that one? When it comes to shampoo, it's a couple of seconds thought process. Whereas high involvement, many alternatives could be evaluated to start with and looking at many different performance criteria. And then narrowing that down in some of that evaluation and so on. And then the purchase stage, then that's when the actual decision happens. So one-stop shopping with substitution very likely in case of low involvement. So again, you're in the supermarket situation, you're in a corner shop, you're buying multiple items at the same time. If the particular brand or product that you wanted isn't there, you're likely to throw something in the basket instead of it. So that's the substitution is very likely. Whereas for a high involvement, if you have decided on a particular brand, you may search for where can you get it. You won't go for the most convenient place. If they don't have it, you're not going to settle for a different alternative. Perhaps you may specifically seek out where can I get this brand and go specifically there to get it or order it online and so on from even if it's an online shop that you haven't used before, you might specifically go for it. And then the final stage, post-purchase processes. In the low involvement, it's a simple evaluation of performance. And then, as you might guess, the high involvement has extensive performance evaluation, use, and eventual disposal. Was it really hard to get rid of that mattress or whatever it is? And did that cause more headache than it was worth? So again, another case studies, read those yourselves. That reinforces the involvement theory point. Excuse me. So compulsive buying is another aspect in understanding our customers. Some consumers buy compulsively, purchasing excessive quantities of items they don't need and sometimes can't afford. So unlike materialism, compulsive consumption is abnormal behavior. Materialism is perfectly fine from a marketer's point of view. It's not it's not a sign of somebody in crisis. The activity of compulsive consumption, however, this is a compulsion. So that is a psychological term, and it's rather than being something pleasurable or functional, buying something they need. So individuals who buy compulsively gain satisfaction from the act of buying and not from having it. So sometimes in extreme cases, for example, people may have an addiction to buying clothes and they are buying clothes faster than they can wear them, and they're often re-gifting them or sending them to charity shops still with tags on them because they've never gotten around to wearing them. So these people have an addiction and should be referred to seek help. So the buyer decision process for new products. You covered this in previous modules. Consumers go through 5 stages in the process of adopting a new product. Awareness, the consumer becomes aware of the new product but lacks information. Then we want to spark interest in it. So first we're working on an ad campaign or a marketing campaign to build brand awareness to get them over the first stage. Then we're trying to incite an interest in this product. They seek information, so we give them more. So hopefully the brand awareness element of the campaign has sparked curiosity for them to seek more information and have that much interest. And then evaluation, the consumer considers whether trying the new product makes sense to them. Is this something they might consider? And then trial phase, they purchase, if especially low involvement, they might just try that new shampoo. Um, or if it's something else, can they try it on a small scale and give them a better idea? So maybe there's a sample or a free class. If it's a new gym membership, maybe there's a couple of free sessions they can take before they decide to sign up for a year. And then finally, adoption. So if the trial goes well, will this be the decision? Will they make a decision to commit for that year membership in the gym, or will they decide, this is going to be my regular shampoo from now on, or whatever, buy it more often? So adopter categories starts with innovators. These people are the first usually to buy a new product that's new to the market. These people are adventurous. They like to try new things, and they're happy, to be taking the risk. And that's, adventurers. There is a risk element in there. They haven't been able to read reviews. There are no reviews. These are the people who will be writing the reviews that other people are waiting to read. So the early adopters are the next phase after innovators. The innovators are practically have signed up before the product has launched nearly. Early adopters are the next stage of people. Still probably not many reviews out there yet. The innovators haven't posted much about it. And these early adopters are a larger group than the innovators. And so this is where the information gets out into the community um, for people to either follow them or steer clear, depending on what these early adopters have to say. And so in those product categories, these people will seek out their advice and follow it. And then the early majority, the product has become a bit more widespread. It's been around for a while, and these people are deliberate, although they're rarely leaders. They adopt new ideas before the average person. And so we're hitting average somewhere between early and late majority. So it's that bell curve graph that you've probably looked at maybe in columns class or some of the other classes. So late majority then are skeptical. They just hang back just a little bit longer than the early majority, but these are where huge numbers of the consumers are getting on board. They adopt the innovation only after most people have already tried it. So they're really seeing, is this something that is value for money and does what it says and so on. And then the final stage, the product is nearly, if you think of phones, this is the phone is nearly, it's probably a couple of models old at this point. With phones, phone companies would tend to have, these adopter categories could be mapped onto the product life cycle category. And so the laggards are buying products usually at the end of their life cycle. There's a lot of sales promotions at this point, and it's the company trying to make the last bit of profit out of this phone in this case before they take it off the market. So there's a lot of very generous plans with your phone package and so on. So these people are tradition bound, are suspicious of changes, and adopt the innovation when it's become something of a tradition itself. Marketers should research innovators and early adopters and should direct marketing efforts, initially anyway, towards them. Excuse me. So differentiation then, consumers often perceive many products as similar. So branding is a way for manufacturers to separate the products from those of competitors. This is differentiation, the definition. So one of the advantages of differentiation is that it takes the focus away from price and may therefore lead to the possibility of charging a premium price. It may also generate buyer loyalty, reducing tendencies towards product substitution or switching. So they develop that connection, that familiarity with your brand, and more likely to stick with it as a result. So we have different ways to differentiate: product differentiation, services differentiation, personnel, or image. So again, little case studies reinforcing the theory points on differentiation. So read them in your own time. So differentiating products through branding. Excuse me. Consumers view a brand as an important part of a product. Branding can add value to the product. The brand conveys a specific set of features, benefits, and services to buyers. It's a mark, a tangible emblem that says something about the product. Powerful brand names command strong customer loyalty. This means that a sufficient number of consumers demand these brands and refuse substitutes, even if substitutes are offered at lower prices. People like to stick with what they know. If they can afford it, if the price is not that significant, they just stick with what they know. They would much rather something they're familiar with than something they are not. Better the devil you know is very powerful in brands. And that's why brand development is so important. In order to develop and maintain strong brands, a company must understand what the values of the brand are and must continue to communicate these as much as possible. And that is where your marcoms come in. So a lot of work in your marcom. So differentiating products through branding, again, a Dunnes Stores example there, so you can read through that. And then another long, sorry, that's a short one there from Tato that you can read in your own time. And then the long ones, oh, why is that? I've lost some data there. So, okay, there's top 10 brands there that you can read. You can Google that and see what's the difference. Or here, let me just do it now. I'll fix the slide. So let me. Okay, so we were comparing 20. Let's see. That is not 2006. Okay, you can look up 2006 from the book, so it doesn't. I don't want you to be spending ages just watching me Google something. So let's see. See if we can get 2017. That's obviously a year I picked because there was a study in that year. Best suppliers honored 2017. Let's see. Where's the list? Okay. Oh, they're all different headings for that one. Best. Sorry, this is annoying. No, okay, you can look it up in your own time. Kantar research is a good source of that kind of information. Let's see, I'll put Kantar in the, see if it gives me anything. Okay, top 10 Irish FMCG brands in 2017. So let's see if I can copy image, stick it in here. Okay. So we've got Avonmore, Brennan's, Denny, Jacobs, Knorr, Muller. So Muller rice and so on, yogurts, Heinz, Coca-Cola, Tato, and Bird's Eye. Now, let's get the equivalent. And the main thing that we are, the main point here is in the 11 or 12 years, you know, what's the difference? So that's, sorry, I'm looking for 2006. Okay, I'm afraid that you're going to have to find that yourselves. But basically, most of the list will remain the same. That's things move up or down a little bit, but most of it will stay the same, and that's generally the point. In 12 years or so, the big brands are still the big brands. So other case studies from the book, you can read those yourselves. Bulmers is always a good marketing case study. They're a big success story across the decades, starting from a reputation for being the kind of drink that people knacker drinking or homeless people drink, to something that's a premium product, and you know, for upmarket occasions, and yeah. So questions that could come up on the exam and help with your studies and so on for this topic. Explain the perceptual process which cause people to form different perceptions of the same stimulus. Next one, discuss the concept of consumer involvement. Give examples of when consumers are in a high involvement state and when they're in a low involvement state. Discuss the factors that increase a consumer's level of involvement with a purchase. Describe the decision, the buyer decision process for new products. What are the advantages of differentiation and what are the advantages and disadvantages of branding? So those are questions for you to try and write out sample answers in your practicing for the exam situation. So we'll be having tutorials during the week, live online, and feel free to ask questions in that. Okay, thank you. Bye.